The second her legs gave out against the icy diner tiles, it felt as if time itself paused. Forks hovered in midair, conversations died on lips, and even the buzzing fluorescent lights seemed louder than her own heartbeat. She hadn't come begging. She hadn't asked for handouts or sympathy. All she wanted was a little food for her children's, something warm to take home. Instead, a harsh grip shoved her forward, and her self-respect shattered across the floor like broken glass. The pain stung, but it wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the humiliation that burned deeper than bruises ever could. Before this story pulls you further in, if you believe kindness still matters, if you believe people deserve second chances and someone should stand up when the world turns its back, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to World of Kindness. And tell us where you're watching from because compassion knows no borders. Her name was Alina Brooks, and life had been stripping pieces of her away long before she stepped into that diner. A year earlier, she had a modest apartment filled with the scent of clean laundry and bedtime whispers. She worked nights scrubbing office floors, and her 2 children believed their mother could solve anything. Then came the layoffs. Then the eviction notices taped to the door. Then the hollow panic of watching shelves empty faster than faith could refill them. Alina didn't give up easily. She walked miles every day hunting for work, queued silently at food banks, and learned how to make a single loaf of bread last far longer than it should. But that morning, her youngest cried from hunger until his small face flushed red, and something inside her finally cracked. With nothing left to lose, she gathered her remaining courage and walked into the diner, believing that asking for leftovers would hurt less than listening to her children fall asleep hungry again. The diner was warm, thick with the smell of coffee and grease, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like shelter. The booths were packed with regulars, people one by time, clinging to routine because it was the last thing keeping them steady. Behind the counter stood Grant Holloway, the manager, a man hardened by years of resentment and control. When he saw Alina, he didn't see a mother or a person. He saw an inconvenience. She asked softly if there was any food destined for the trash. His jaw tightened. In her quiet voice, he heard weakness, and he chose cruelty. His words escalated, his temper flared, and before anyone could stop it, his hand was on her shoulder, shoving her backward, as if she was something filthy that needed to be removed. Alina fell, her hands scraping the floor, her chest tightening with shame, so sharp it stole her breath. She tried to speak, to explain, but fear wrapped around her throat. The diner stayed silent, not out of agreement, but because fear spreads faster than bravery. Some turned away, others stared, frozen. A few clutched their mugs tighter, praying not to be noticed. Grant mistook that silence for approval. He felt powerful, justified, certain he was protecting his space from someone he decided didn't belong. He didn't notice the door opening behind him. He didn't feel the shift in the air as heavy boots stepped inside. Outside, a motorcycle group had pulled in for breakfast, engines cooling in the lot. They weren't the monstrous people imagined when they saw leather jackets and tattoos. They were people forged by loyalty, by hardship, by knowing what it meant to fall and be lifted back up by someone who refused to let go. Their leader, Marcus Vale, had lived long enough to understand how thin the line was between dignity and despair. When they walked in and saw a woman on the floor, tears streaking her face, something deep and unbreakable stirred within them. They didn't rush. They didn't shout. They simply stood, and their presence alone tipped the balance of the room. Marcos took in the scene with a calm that unsettled Grant immediately. The manager's anger faltered as he realized he was no longer the strongest force there. The bikers formed a quiet barrier, their eyes steady, not threatening, but condemning. The silence became suffocating. Alina slowly pushed herself upright, hands trembling, heart pounding so loudly she feared everyone could hear it. She braced herself for more cruelty. Instead, she felt something else take its place, something solid and warm. Respect. The truth came out without raised voices. Why she was there. The children waiting at home. How quickly life had collapsed beneath her feet. Each sentence peeled away Grant's authority until he looked smaller than the fear he had tried to wield. Around the diner, something changed. Guilt loosened tongues. Courage arrived late, but strong. One person stood, then another. The room that had been holding its breath finally exhaled. Alina felt the shift before she fully understood it. Hands lifted her not roughly, but gently. Plates appeared on the counter, filled without questions. A coat was draped over her shoulders when someone noticed how thin her sweater was. The bikers didn't demand apologies or issue threats. They simply stayed, reminding everyone that cruelty survives only when decent people remain silent. Grant retreated behind the counter, his power dissolved under the unforgiving light of decency. Alina sat and ate slowly, tears falling into her food, not from shame this time, but from relief. For the first time in months, she felt visible. She felt like a mother again, not a failure. The bikers shared the space with her not as heroes but as witnesses to her resilience. Without speeches or promises, they showed her the world still held people willing to step in when lines were crossed. When she finally stood to leave, her arms were full, not just with food for her children, but with something heavier and far more valuable: hope. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, and the air felt lighter. The motorcycles rode to life not in menace, but in unity, a reminder that help sometimes arrives in unexpected forms. Alina walked home with steadier steps, her shoulders straighter than they had been in months. That night, her children ate until they were full. She watched them sleep, her heart feeling stitched back together. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Bills would still wait. Work would still be uncertain. Fear would still whisper in quiet moments. But she also knew this: she wasn't alone. And neither was anyone brave enough to ask for help. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that kindness can redirect a life, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to World of Kindness so more stories like this can be told. Before the video ends, we have one final request: leave a single word in the comments that captures how this story made you feel, because your words might be the encouragement someone else is searching for.